Hi, Valley Tissue Culture team. Thank you so much for your time. So I'm Beatrix Westdyke. I'm 31 years old, and just to start off with some background on who I am, how I grew up, my past experiences. So I was born in South Africa, grown up in South Africa, work experiences in South Africa. I've traveled a small bit within Africa, just to South Africa's neighboring countries, but never been overseas at all to the US or Europe or Australia or so. Grew up in a very much a family orientated community, and grew up with, I've got a brother, so it was my mom, my dad, my brother, and I, a very close knit family. And grew up in Durbanville, which is it's one of the suburbs surrounding Cape Town. So I grew up here, did my schooling here, and then studied in Bloemfontein. So Bloemfontein is about 1,000 kilometers away, in the Free State. So I moved there and I studied my studies. It was a Bachelor of Science in Agronomy that I did. So very privileged to have gone to university on a partial sports bursary. So from young I was always very active, played sports, and I played hockey quite well, quite competitively. Played provincial hockey all the years, field hockey. And then when I went to university, I played provincial hockey and hockey for the university. So very grateful for that, and I think my sports background as a whole, so I tend to try to live quite a healthy lifestyle. I don't drink, don't smoke, I eat relatively healthily, and I exercise. And I think also, just as for my personal development, sort of the sportsmanship aspect was really important and really uplifting to me. And I think that is something still I work very well in a team setup. I enjoy a team kind of environment. Um, Moving to Bloemfontein, I think apart from what I studied, which was also very good, but as for me as a person, I moved 1,000 kilometers away from home, and that opportunity to be amongst different people was very interesting for me, my personal growth. I think when you around the same people, and especially the same people as you've grown up with, there's a level on which you choose to be that person, but there's also a level on which you are in a friend group and you sort of conform to the normal life choices and way of doing things, because that's what your environment influences you to do. So I think it's always very interesting when you outside of that environment that encourages you to be like that in a different environment, and to see what are the choices you make then, how do you live your life then. So very good for my personal development. And I think one of the crucial things which has stuck with me since then, and I think will always stick with me, is the Free State people and Bloemfontein's people that I studied with are known to be very salt of the earth kind of people, hardworking people, kind people, honest people, and open and inviting. And I think that really stuck with me. That wherever you are, whatever you're doing, how you do it matters, and you choose how you want to do it. So you can sort of live by the belief that in order for me to get ahead, someone else must stay behind, or you can take the approach that there's enough sun to shine on everyone, and that we're all growing and we're all interacting together and support each other at growing. So that has stuck with me since then, and I think that's been reinforced so many times going further into my life, is that we can be uplifting, we can be positive, we can work as a team, and that is always, in the long run, always more beneficial than trying to get ahead. So I think that's really important, and something that's very important to me. I think one of the questions was also about dislikes, and I was thinking about it. I am in general quite an easygoing person, quite an adaptable person, so there's not really a lot that I specifically don't dislike, but I would say that that is one thing. Sort of a destructive environment is not something that I do well in, and do well with. So that is what I would say I dislike. Other than that, I am quite easygoing. Just in terms of my personality, I do have a bit more of an introverted side, but also do love people, and to just be on my own all the time isn't good for me. But I do, having been around a lot of people, I also need a bit more of a contemplative time as well. So sometimes that's time on your own, and sometimes that's time, for example, hiking, where you with people, but you sort of also in your own mind, in your own space. So as for hobbies, I very much, as I say, active kind of person. I love being in nature, hiking, kayaking, camping, snorkeling. Those kind of things are right down my alley. So I think that's really important to me, but I also very much have an interest in sort of philosophy and psychology, and why people do things, how people think, so I read quite a bit in that regard as well, and listen to podcasts as well. So I think there's always something to learn in that sort of line. So I think that's pretty much who I am. So I as I say, I studied in Bloemfontein, and then after that I got a job in Vicksburg, so it's also in the Free State. It's about 200 kilometers away from Bloemfontein, so still very far from home, and also a bit more rural than Bloemfontein. I stayed on the farm as well, but also the town a lot smaller, and not access to things like team sports and that kind of thing. So really enjoyed it there. Very nice people as well. I think I learned a lot. I really enjoyed the work there. So it was apple tree nursery, open ground apple tree nursery, not in pots, and very interesting work. I think for anyone, you study and you learn all these things in theory, but then when you go and you actually see what you've learned in a practical setting, that's always very interesting, and you always learn a lot. So as I say, my studies were in agronomy, field crops, and the work that I was doing on the farm then was more horticultural work. So there's definitely an overlap in principles and so, but also a lot of new things for me to learn, and I learned a lot through experience and through more of a practical side than a theoretical side. So just in that regard, I started as an intern and worked my way up and learnt and grew as I went. And when I finished up, I was working as the nursery manager, so responsible for the whole farming side of the business, which was very interesting. So I'll get into the detail of exactly what I did and my experience there, but just some sort of lessons or takeaways that I have from that is a few things. I think first of all, when I started there, the work was more practical. So I started as an intern. Whereas when I finished up, it was management, and a lot of it was people management, project management, that kind of thing. And I felt like I wasn't able to spend as much time on each aspect as I would have liked to. So I think going forward, do I want to work in agriculture? I really enjoy it. I find the working with plants and the sort of, you see the results of what you've done. I find that very interesting and very rewarding. But I think if I could choose going forward, I would like to work not with quite as much of a broad range where it's just management, but rather to work in a more narrow range. So for example, let's say to do the irrigation and the plant nutrition aspects. Something like that, sort of at a maximum in terms of my management, but otherwise, as I say, I really enjoy the practical aspect of it. So happy to not be in a management role, happy to focus on playing my role. So I think on other really important things, so that the nursery that I worked at, we had 80 permanent staff and then seasonal staff that worked as well, and the seasonal staff, depending on the workload throughout the year, varied from about 40 people to about 150. So at sort of at peak time, we're working with 230 people roundabout, which is quite a big team, and a lot of tasks going on, and so I think I definitely would prefer to work with a smaller team, but what it really taught me is the importance of each person playing their role in the team setting well. So I think if each person plays their role in the setting well and works hard and works as well as they can, then to manage a team like that is actually not difficult. Whereas if you have people slacking, if you have people trying to get away with working as little as possible and trying to still earn income, that is a difficult setting. So I think going forward, for me in my next phase of life, if I can do that, if I can play my role well, do my job well, then I think I really would feel like I'm adding value to the team and setting the team up to succeed. I think another important lesson on the practical side is sort of from a quality of work aspect. If you do what you need to do now, if you do it well, then it sets you up to make your next task easier. But if you do a half job now, or you don't do something properly, it sets you up to struggle 2 weeks down the line. So I think that's really important, is as you go and do each thing well, and it'll set you up to have a easier path going forward. So I think if I can do that going forward, play my part in the team well and focus on high quality work and adding value to the team in that regard, that is definitely a focus of mine. And then I think another thing, just as I say, it was a bit more of a rural setting, no team sports, and so and I, with time, work took over more and more of my life, and I didn't maintain other interests outside of it as well as I should. So I think the importance of that, of understanding the place of work in your life. I also believe to not work is not good for a person. It's not good for your mental health and your physical health. So I really feel that it's important to work and to work well, but also to maintain, especially in a rural setting, maintain your close relationships with your family and friends far away, play a role in their lives, and understand the role that work is playing in your life, adding value, allowing you to do something that you enjoy and to be productive in your day, but also to provide you with the income and allow you to also prioritize hobbies and to live your life in the way that you would like to live it, to your standard of excellence. So I think it's really important just to, and something that I learned, to keep work in perspective with your life as a whole. I think that there's peak times and there's busier times where you work harder, but then there's also a time where you take things a bit slower, make sure that you're prioritizing yourself and so. And I think even in the busy times, eat well, rest well, maintain your relationships, and look after yourself, manage your stress. I think that is a good long-term strategy. I think what I was doing on the farm was trying to run at 100%, trying to run flat out continuously, which is a short-term approach, but you do get burnt out, and then it affects your personal life, it affects your work, it affects everything. And then, so just a last thing that I would like to expand on. So I then started working in the family business, which it's a bakery, and we supply to a lot of the health shops in the area, some of the chain stores. So it's a business that was built up from scratch and which we're very proud of. But I think what I just would like to say is, I think when you work for someone else, then there's a bit of your own drive also. But I think also it's very much driven by what does your boss want you to do, what is the expectation. Whereas I think in a family business or own business kind of setup, it really requires you to be your own driver of what is excellence. And I think that has just been an important life lesson for me, and I think it's a mindset that is helpful in any setup, whether it's a family business or own business or working for an employer, is for you to drive your work to your level of excellence and to always be pushing yourself to grow, pushing yourself to improve. So just to answer why I'm looking for work, so I think there's a couple of things involved. First of all, as I say, I really do enjoy working with plants. I enjoy the sort of agricultural line of work, and also it tends to be sort of a team setting, so I really enjoy that. And I feel that I've got a lot of experience, but that I also still have a lot to learn and grow. So I'm a hard worker, I know that. So as long as someone is willing to teach me, I'm willing to learn, and I feel that I have a lot of value to add. And then I always feel when you go to a new place with people that have grown up differently, people that think differently, there's always a lot that you can learn. So I think for my personal development as a human being as well, I think it's always interesting when you're in amongst new people, and there's always something that you can learn and still grow at in your own life. So I think it would be a really great experience for me. And in terms of the big picture of my whole life, I want to do agriculture my whole life. I think the other sort of interest that I have is sort of the life coaching line. But I think that working in agriculture, you're always working with a lot of people. So I feel like there's a lot of potential there to make a difference in a team and to be a positive leader and to set the standard on work done well. So I think I really would be very grateful if I could come to work in the US, because I think it would set me up well for whichever way I go in life, whether I stay in the US, whether I move back, whether I stay in agriculture, or whether I change careers later down the line. So I think it really would be a good experience for me. So just to give you a bit more detail on my past work experience, so it was Apple Tree Nursery in the Free State. So we had, as I say, about 80 permanent staff, and then a varying number of seasonals, but working with up to 230 people at a time. The farming sector was all under me when I finished up there, so very much people management, very much. In order to run a nursery, you have to understand all the technical aspects and the whole farming process. So from soil samples, soil prep, ridging, planting, the maintenance throughout the season, so weeding, fertilizer, pest control, the plant nutrition side, pruning and tree training. We produced a standard whip trees as well as double leaders, and so I think that was also interesting, learning the different applications and different techniques. And then obviously budding and grafting. Sorry, I forgot that one. So the whole production aspect fell under me. And as I say, I feel like towards the end I was just managing people, and I didn't feel like I was able to get to each aspect as thoroughly as I would have wanted to. I just feel that is something important to me going forward, is to rather take a narrower scope and make sure that team really performs excellently. So so I think that's on the sort of farming side. Then I was also involved, I did all the stock control. So as you know, what you plant, the stock varies greatly before what you have left at the end. So all those calculations, in order to meet the orders that we have for 2 years' time, how much do we need to plant now, how much do we need to bud of each variety, what are our expected losses, that whole calculation. And then also the quality control. So the trees were graded on a height basis. The taller they are, the more expensive they are. And I think that was one of the very important aspects of the farm that I worked on, was that over the years we tried to improve the uniformity, the size of the trees, and then the complexity of the trees, the number of side branches and so. But just in that regard as well, along with stock control comes the traceability aspect. So the rootstock sources, the budwood sources, the different treatments that we'd applied throughout the processes in the different areas, and also the sort of the global gap side, so the fertilizer records, the pest control records, all of that as well. So I think that's also something very relevant to a tissue culture lab, is the traceability aspect. So we had a layer bed component in which we propagated rootstocks in, but we also worked with the tissue culture lab. It started off smaller, but when I left, when I finished working there, we were working with about 350,000 tissue culture plants a year that we were planting. So I'm not very familiar with especially the lab component of tissue culture work. The greenhouse aspect, a bit more familiar with that. So I feel I have a good starting point, and willingness to learn. So I think also just I don't have that great a picture, but I have got a lot of understanding about how tissue culture lab works. One of our frustrations on the receiving end was receiving ununiform trays, bigger sizes, or receiving trays with holes in, or the difference in the stock count of what we were told is coming and then what actually arrives. So I think also just having an understanding of what the frustrations are helps you then to be more proactive in how do we improve on that, how do we make sure that we are consistent with our stock counts and that we are providing uniform plants. Yes, and then I think just overall that I'd like to mention is, I think in terms of quality control in the nursery tasks, you have to know how to do something in order for you to be able to supervise a team that's doing it. So my experience, as I say, especially towards the end, was very much management focused, but I can do all of the work. I have a good understanding and I can do the work, and as I say, willing to learn, hard worker, willing to do anything that is needed. And then, as I say, I ended up towards the end feeling like I'm not able to get around to everything as well as I would like to, and that also came with a bit of anxiety, and so I think it put me in a space where I realized this is not sustainable. I need to, there's got to be a better way, and ultimately I resigned from that job, and as I say, moved into the family business. So the family business, it's a rusk factory, so it's baking, and I just want to mention that I think the traceability aspect also applies very much in this business. So I am very involved with the health and safety aspect and the traceability. So every batch that we bake, we've got the records on which batch codes of flour, of eggs, of sugar, of butter, everything that goes in, we've got the batch codes. And again, after the production aspect, every packet that gets sent out, we have the records on which batch codes went where. So it's also it's a different application, but it's also got a bit of the traceability aspect, which I think is very important in a tissue culture lab. But just to summarize, so I when I moved here and got involved with the family business, it was November that I started. So important time of year for this business is November, or it's actually October, November, December, because we have a lot of Christmas markets and things going. So it's a much busier time of year than the rest of the year. So the idea was that I take a few months off, come and help with that, come and help us through, help the business through the peak season, and then to look for work from there. But at that point, I'd been struggling with some pain in the hip. We tried physio, we tried exercise, we've tried all the non-invasive solutions, and I saw the physio, and the recommendation was then that there's a labral tear, so it's a small tear in the joint, in the joint capsule, where it's torn away from the bone, and that needed to be fixed. So in February, they did a small operation. It's a laparoscopic surgery, walking the next day without crutches. So so I just felt at that point I can rush straight back into agricultural work, but my hip and my health is really important. I want to make sure that it's really in good condition before I come back to work, so that it doesn't influence my ability to function well at work. And also, I am 31 years old. I want my hip to last a long time. So I've really taken the rehab process quite seriously, and continued on in the family business, because it allowed me to stay productive, and to be more involved during that time in a sort of an admin role, while I wasn't able to pick up boxes and so, but to still be productive and still be learning and adding value. So I am now in a space, I've taken the rehab, taken it seriously, and my hip is in a really good space. So I've been hiking, I've been running, I have continued throughout the last few months the strength training, working with biokineticist, and I've got a letter as well to say that I'm cleared to work fully, no limitations on my physical capacity to work. So I understand, coming across to the US, it's a long way to come. Wouldn't want to come there, and it's the hip is a problem for belly tissue culture. Also, it would not be good for me or for my confidence to come and to feel like I'm not able to perform. So I have been very thorough in the whole process, and I am in a good space to come back to work and ready to add value. So I think that's my whole story. Excited to get back into the agricultural sector, and excited about the possibilities. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to hearing from you. I will add on some videos just to show where I'm at, from a physical strength side, as well as my fine motor skills and stuff. Thank you very much.
reset.
So there's a 25 kg bag of coconut. There's 25 liters of coconut oil. That's 2 of them.
We all have stuff we love. Wallet, watch, phone, you name it. We've made it easy for you to keep your valuables extra safe with our dedicated valuables lockers, coupled by CCTV. You can find them outside the men's and women's change rooms. All you need is your own lock.